Hey, welcome back. I want to do another video today that is, well, in some ways it's a continuation of last week's video where I talked about what you need. Only instead of what you need versus what they tell you need, this is, well, maybe it's the same darn thing. Well, see, I want to talk a little bit about winter feeding because there's an awful lot of myths and a lot of practices that are very, very common that a lot of people think they should be doing. And well, with winter just around the corner, I thought it was appropriate we talked about this now. Because, well, overfeeding is actually a bit of a problem. I've seen it firsthand. I've seen a lot of overweight horses, and I was reading an article not long ago that said that obesity in horses is almost epidemic in North America. And I think I'd be inclined to believe that from what I have seen. The feeding practices that a lot of people participate in are largely a waste of money and bad for the health of the horse. A lot of people are really scared of, oh, I don't want to underfeed my horse because it might get sick. Well, overfeeding it can make it sick too. There's a lot of illnesses that are directly a result of overfeeding. And winter overfeeding is particularly prominent. Let me talk about this and explain why. Well, horses have far less trouble staying warm than they do staying cool in the summertime. Now, if you happen to live in a lot of these milder climates, even talking about winter is silly, and I mean, it barely gets below freezing in some places. I'd hardly call that winter. And yet at that point, a lot of people are already doing stuff. Oh, I don't know. I watched a little while ago a documentary. It was from television, and it took place in some rather remote country. I'm not sure where, don't recall, but it was, winter temperatures were routinely minus 40. It was not uncommon there. It was quite barren. In fact, in all the pictures, there wasn't so much as a tree. I don't recall there being any shelters at all. And they actually raised horses. They had a whole herd of horses out there. And absolutely none of them got supplements or extra feed or blankets or anything. And they all did very, very well. And keeping in mind, if it was necessary to do this, I'm pretty sure the people would have done it because they were dependent on that herd of horses for their living. That's what they did for a living. And even the horses that they rode got nothing extra. And so it's perfectly possible. I mean, there are people doing it. You don't have to be coddling your horse. I don't even own a blanket. My horses do not get any extra feeds or supplements whatsoever, and they're still fat. Well, one of the big mistakes that people make is they think that in order to maintain good health in the wintertime, they need extra feed because they need extra heat to stay warm. That's not true at all. Not true one little bit. And in fact, most of the supplements and feeds that you're giving your horse do less to produce heat than just plain old hay. If you're feeding your horse anything other than just plain old hay, you are throwing your money out the window, and you're probably increasing the risk of colic, laminitis, and a host of other illnesses. Not to mention the obesity, which, well, this leads me to another part. And, like with all my videos, I've said from years back, don't take my word for things. Go do your own research, your own homework, and be very cautious when you're reading articles. See who wrote them. Make sure it's not somebody that is manufacturing or selling feeds or blankets or whatever, because they're going to be biased. They want your money, so they're going to tell you need this stuff, so you buy it. And there's no laws stopping them from doing that. So just because somebody says you need this stuff or it's good for you, no, that doesn't mean it is or that you need it. And, well, back to the overfeeding in the winter, common problem. And one of the things that you always hear people worried about is, got to keep them off the spring grass. Too much sugar's in it. It's bad for them. They'll get laminitis. And there is some truth to that, but only a tiny bit, and only if you overfeed them during the winter time. if they actually lose a little weight over the course of the winter, come springtime, they actually need that extra sugar in the spring grass, and it doesn't bother them one little bit. That's what natural horses do. Wild horses, nobody's giving them supplements. They get skinny over the winter, and come springtime, guess what? They're eating the spring grass. Nobody's stopping them. And do they get lame? No. Why? Because by the time spring rolls around, they need it. It's good for them. There's nothing wrong with it. It's a natural cycle, the way to do things. So, and a lot of people like to give grains to their horses too, of various kinds, and most feed supplements have got grains in them. And the horse's digestive system was never, ever, ever designed for grains. They are not efficiently metabolized. You're wasting your money. It is unhealthy. Too much grains can cause colic. There's a lot of problems that can be caused by grains. And there's actually very few grains that are even safe to give to your horse. And even those, they don't need them. And even, they're not really all that good. Even stuff like oats, that is probably the only safe grain, still has a lot of sugar in it. It's not good for your horse either. And if you're giving this stuff to your horse in the wintertime, well, you're not doing it any favors. And, I'll go there. The blanket, the stupid blankets. I know I'm going to hear lots. There's going to be lots of people that go, oh, horses need blankets. No, they don't. Horses don't need blankets. You'll find very little evidence, very few articles at all on blankets that aren't written or published by people that are either manufacturing them or selling them. It's all biased information, and the few non-biased studies really don't indicate that horses need them. In fact, there was one I read actually suggested that blankets can actually make your horse cold. Well, there was one study I read, because I read a lot of studies on this kind of stuff, and there was one that suggested that the horses themselves indicated they wanted blankets at a certain temperature. Well, I'm not quite sure how they got the horses to do that, but I think there may have also been some other variables in there as well they didn't talk about or consider. So I'm not even sure how accurate that study was, but it's the only one that I ever came across that was not biased, that actually indicated the possibility that horses actually like their blankets. Otherwise, forget about it. Now back to the feed thing again. Another one of the things that people feed their horses, and I tell you, there's nothing better for a horse than just plain old crappy grass hay. Horses are not meant to eat rich foods. They are not meant to eat cultivated foods. They're meant to scrounge and forage and eat whatever they can find, which includes weeds and twigs and leaves off trees and whatever is available. That's what horses eat. And one of the common feeds that people give horses, thinking that it's okay, is alfalfa. It's not unusual to see alfalfa in hay, usually in smaller percentages, but, right away there's going to be arguments. Oh, my horse has been eating alfalfa for years, never bothered it. Yeah, well, I also know a guy that feeds his horses pure alfalfa, and somehow they survive. Not quite sure how, although there was one there I saw was very, very crusty. Definitely should not have been eating alfalfa. But anyhow, it was never intended for horse feed. It was originally cultivated to fatten up cattle. Fatten them up for market. Fat. Do you hear that? It was made to fatten the animal. It was not made to nourish them. It was made to fatten them. They wanted to put weight on in a hurry on cattle. So they came up with alfalfa, and then somewhere along the line, somebody in the race industry thought a high-energy feed would make the horse run faster, so they started feeding alfalfa to the race horses, and then all of a sudden, everybody seems to think it's okay to feed alfalfa to horses. No, it's not. It's not part of their natural diet at all. Never was, never has been, and it's only people that have decided it was a good idea. The horses didn't, but like a kid in a candy store, sure, they'll eat it. It tastes great. They love it. They'll eat it, yep. No doubt about it. Doesn't mean it's good for them, though. And judging by the health conditions and obesity in a lot of humans, I don't think humans are a whole lot smarter than horses when it comes to eating things that aren't really good for you or eating too much of them. So winter comes along. You think your horse needs to be warm? Give it hay. That's all. Nothing but hay. Hay is the best generator of heat in a horse's diet. They do not need any supplements or extra feeds or grains or alfalfa or anything. If you think that your horse actually needs something, have them blood tested, consult a vet, and make sure that what you're spending your money on is something the horse actually needs, because by and large, the biggest issue that we have is people overfeeding horses in the wintertime. And I see it all the time. And I'll tell you right now, even without any of the extra supplements and stuff, I've still got a couple horses that are fat. So, in fact, one to the point, I got to put her in a diet pen. I have to actually restrict her intake. And yeah, winter's coming. And I am cutting back how much she's getting, because that is what's healthiest for her. That's what's best for her. And I don't take these decisions lightly, and I sure hope you don't either. And again, like I said, don't believe what I tell you. Well, I hope you do. Actually, I hope you just verify what I tell you. That's better. Go and do your homework, do your research, and verify the things that I tell you to be true, and find out you've been wasting hundreds, if not thousands of dollars on feeds and supplements for your horse that it does not need, and in fact are actually doing it harm. So please, stop overfeeding your horse in the wintertime. Stop wasting your money on blankets. Those things aren't cheap either. The horse doesn't need either of those. All they need is just good old ordinary hay, Timothy hay, brome grass, whatever, junk, crappy hay, cheap hay, not the expensive stuff, not the rich stuff. No, just the cheap stuff, the junky stuff. That's what's best for them. It's got lots of roughage without a whole lot of sugars in it, and that's what's best for their digestive system. It keeps them healthy, keeps them happy, and it keeps them warm. And if they do happen to get out onto the pasture in the spring, onto that spring grass, and by the way, the pasture is absolutely the best place for the horse. They need to move. I've told you this a couple of times. I'll tell you again. That horse has got to be able to move. Get it out on the pasture. I don't care if it's covered with spring grass. If you don't overfeed them in the winter, it doesn't matter. It's not going to bother them. In fact, they need it, and it's good for them. So other than that, just quit wasting your money. They don't need all these extras. Stop overfeeding your horse. It's not good for them, and it's a problem, a big problem. Don't be part of that problem, okay? Have a good day, and save some money. Go play with your horse.